So Daryl, how do we go about unsucking the meeting? What's the plan?
Right.
What do we got here?
Well, let's start before the meeting even starts, okay? Because oftentimes, once we get to the meeting, it's too late.
Yeah.
If we haven't set it up for success and we haven't prepared for the meeting, it's too late to unsuck this thing. It already sucks. We're in deep.
We're already in knee deep in suck.
Knee deep in suck. This thing is gone, okay? So we need to start before that.
Okay. So how do we prepare? What do we do first? What's the out of the gate? You sit down. I'm at my desk. I've got my legal pad out. I'm going to prepare for the meeting. Where do I start?
Yeah. We start, to me, this is about asking the question why. And the answer to that really is the purpose. Why are we having this meeting? Because whether you realize, if you're the meeting facilitator, whether you realize it or not, everyone is asking this question.
Right.
Okay, I promise you, everyone is asking this question. Why are we having this meeting? So if you are not asking this question, that's going to create a problem because everyone else is and you are not. So we need to understand the purpose of the meeting. And maybe the most important part about this, obviously we need to actually define what the purpose of the meeting is, but perhaps the more important part of this is actually that everyone in the meeting knows what the purpose is and not just the facilitator.
Right.
Okay, everyone in the meeting needs to clearly understand the purpose of the meeting. And this is kind of the large picture. The purpose of this is an informational meeting. This is to clearly convey information to everyone in the meeting. Maybe the purpose is to knock off a few agendas. It's to have next action steps. Maybe it's determine a specific number for something. You know, so this is a larger high level
and
purpose.
This one thing, like if all you did was start determining what your purpose was and communicating it to everybody, will change your meetings for everyone. Because I always give the example of, you know, I said this in proximity, you know, if I told you like, okay, you're going to spend the next 5 hours filling bags with sand. I know the purpose of why we're doing it and you don't. How hard are you going to work at this task until you're like, what the heck is this about? Oh, there's a flood coming and we're going to use these bags of sand to protect your house or your grandmother's house. Okay, so all of a sudden now you're working with purpose. If everybody knows purpose of the meeting, they're there on purpose, for purpose, your meeting is going to be a huge game changer.
Game changer. I mean, that's the word for it, game changer, because it just infiltrates every other aspect of the meeting. So the next thing that's going to happen, and this kind of flows directly out of the purpose, is the agenda. All right, and agendas look different for different kinds of meetings, but the thing to understand generally about this is these are the things that need to get done in the meeting. Okay, so to continue with your example of filling bags with sand, because there's a flood coming, well, the purpose, you know, is to create a barrier against the flood. Okay, it's to protect ourselves from the flood. But that's not the agenda. No one knows how to do
necessarily,
that. Okay, the agenda is to find a source of bags, of sandbags, to find a source of sand, to create an assembly line.
Do we have the right equipment? Do we have shovels?
Right equipment. Determine how many bags of sand do we need, okay, to successfully accomplish our goal. So these are some things that would look like the agenda items for that. These are things that you actually need to do in the meeting in order to be ready for action.
Right. So if we're going to save Grandma's house, you know, there's a timeline. There's a who does what by when. Like there's like a.
That's right.
There's like all the, you know, let's determine who's doing what.
That's right. That's right. So and I just want to mention that one thing that the agenda is not are things that we would like to get done, things that we think we could discuss since we have these people, we happen to have these people in the meeting. You know, oh yeah, you know, Tim and Rob and Julia are going to be in the meeting, and yeah, they do communication stuff and paperwork stuff too. So we could just ask them these other questions since they're going to be there. That's what does not go on the agenda. It needs to follow directly in suit from the purpose. you need to be really conscious about maintaining those boundaries of the purpose and the agenda so that the meeting doesn't go off course.
Yeah.
Because no one likes that.
No.
All right.
Okay.
So once we've got an agenda, we can kind of figure out.
Like, well, you want to figure out the timeline.
Yeah.
Like, when is the meeting going to take place? How long does the meeting need to be? Right. I mean, if it's if you're just discussing who's working on what issue, that could be a stand-up meeting. Nobody even needs to sit down. It's 5 minutes. You go around, everybody talks about what they're working on. So we have awareness for the team. Boom, done.
Yeah.
Or is it more strategic? We have off-site meetings with our whole senior leadership. We need to determine the direction of the whole organization for the next year, or 3 years, or 5 years.
Right.
Different meeting, different timeline.
Right. But a set timeline.
It's set timeline.
Yeah.
And those are going to happen less frequently because you can't just do an offsite every week.
Right.
Because then that's less productive.
11 million meetings.
Right.
Okay.
11 million offsites
every day. It's
Yeah.
It can't happen.
No.
It just can't. So once we have an agenda, we've got purpose, we've got the agenda, we know how long this thing is going to take, approximately, maximum length. Meetings are allowed to finish early.
Yeah.
I just want to mention that. You're allowed to quit early in a meeting.
Oh, and the thing I thought I failed to mention was we often default to like 30 or 60 minutes. And we were talking about why is it that we do that? Oftentimes when you look at your Outlook calendar, it says, oh, you have a block for 30 minutes, so you make a meeting for 30 minutes.
Right.
Well, if it only takes 5 or 10 minutes, you don't need all 30. You can actually type that in there, but oftentimes we just default to things without thinking about them. So and I've done that. I do
Sure,
that.
absolutely. We all have. So we've got these things set. Now we need to figure out who actually needs to be here in the meeting.
Right.
And this comes, once again, directly from the agenda. Okay, who has to be in this meeting in order to successfully accomplish what's on the agenda? And we want to take a minimalistic approach to this. This is really who has to be there. Like if someone doesn't need to be here in order to be successful, let's not bring them in. I mean, they've got other things to do, other things to work on. We want every meeting that we want to have maximum relevance for every single person in that meeting. And that comes from asking that question, who really has to be here?
And I think you have to take into account, I hadn't thought about this before, but, making sure that people know why they're there, that falls under purpose.
Yeah.
But if there are other people that would think that they need to be there, to let them know, like, why they're not, because you don't want people feeling some type of way because they've been left out. Like, no, we're not trying to leave you out. We're actually, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and we want you to continue to work on that. You're doing great work, whatever it is. But clear communication is important in relevance.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we're going to touch on communication transparency a little bit more later. But it already comes into play before we're even meeting. This communication transparency already comes into play.
In the preparation, who you have to communicate. And again, I think we're looking at attitude in this too. You're preparing the positive attitude and going into the meeting set to get great work done.
Right. Exactly. So important. Our attitude changes how we communicate, what we say, how we come across to other people, and what we do.
Absolutely.
A lot of times our attitude makes the difference between choosing to send an email or not send an email.
Right.
It really can. Or even to sit down and determine the purpose of a meeting. If we're cynical about the meeting, if we think the meeting is a waste of time, we're less likely to sit down and actually determine the purpose or create an agenda for it because we think it's pointless.
Right.
Our attitudes are so important.
Right. Creating that, like, the win-win. How can we all benefit from doing this?
Yeah, so, for creating successful meetings. So the last thing, this is so important, last but not least, the last thing to do to prepare for a meeting is to prepare.
I love it.
It sounds stupid, right? But how often do we go into meetings completely unprepared. We haven't actually sat down and put together the stuff that we need to be ready for the meeting. We haven't collected the papers we need. We haven't created the slideshow. We haven't made a bullet pointed list of things that we want to mention in the meeting. We haven't done anything. We haven't rehearsed what we want to say in the meeting. We haven't done any of these things.
Yeah, and I think like even getting there early, make sure it's all set up and ready to go so that you're not rushing in at the end. And that is something I've struggled with, being late to meetings. A lot of people late to the meetings that they're running.
Right.
And already if you're there, everybody else is thinking that the meeting sucks because you've already wasted 5 minutes of their time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So these are all things that you can do before the meeting even gets started. So next we're going to talk about what we can do during the meeting
In the meeting.
to continue unsucking the meeting.
Yeah.